Hey, you've bought a vintage sewing machine, congratulations! And now you're wondering what to do with it. My name's Ollie, this is Simply Stitchy, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing my top tips on what you should do as soon as you get that new baby home. Let's get into it. Before we do, there's something we need to deal with first. We need to look at the elephant in the room. Why is that an expression? Today's elephant is vintage sewing machines, or rather the meaning of the word vintage when it comes to sewing machines. There are people, collectors usually, but not always, who consider vintage to be a term reserved solely for machines that predate the 1960s, like Grandma here, because they're all metal or cast iron and traditional. The thing is, vintage isn't a term reserved solely for sewing machines. It's actually a word that describes wine. Vintage refers to the year and place a wine was produced. It's been slightly hijacked over time to refer to any old stuff that's over a certain age. That's the key when deciding if something is vintage. It's based on age, not what it's made of. I've written a blog post on the difference between the terms vintage, antique and even retro. The link's in the description box. The term vintage can be used to relate to anything that's over 20 years old, but younger than 100. Anything over 100 is antique. Dear old Jerome here is from 2004, so he will be considered a vintage machine in 3 years' time. I'm not sure how I feel about that. If he's turning 20, that means I'm getting old. Could I be considered vintage? At the time of filming this video, the machines manufactured in the year 2001 are turning 20 this year. It's 2021. So they are considered, by me at least, to be vintage enough to be covered in this video. The points that I'm going to cover are applicable to all sewing machines from 2001 all the way back to the 1850s, regardless of whether they're all plastic or metal, or more likely a combination of both. Top tip number one, make sure if it doesn't come with a manual, you download one from the internet. I'm going to put some links in the description box for the places where you can actually get manuals online for free. You need the manual because not only will it show you how to thread your machine, how to use different functions on your machine, but it will also tell you what parts you need for your machine and how to care for it. It's invaluable. Make sure that's the first thing you do. Top tip number two, check your electrics and your wiring. Now hopefully this is something that you will have done before you actually purchase the machine. But when you get it home, just double check that your plug is looking encased and safe. Make sure the connection on the sewing machine is also intact. If your machine has any signs of wear on the cable, or there's any wires showing outside of the casing, you might find that your machine will need to be rewired. If you live in a country like the UK, for instance, that has gone through a few different styles of plug, make sure that the plug style fits the plug sockets in your wall, because otherwise you won't be able to plug it in. Again, if you're in any doubt at all about the state of your electrics, make sure before you even consider plugging it into the mains you get it rewired. Top tip number three, give it a bit of a spring clean. The chances are, if the seller's parting with a machine, it's probably been sat for a while and it might be a little bit dusty. Now usually a soft dry cloth is sufficient just to wipe away any surface dust, and it works as well as on plastic as it does on cast iron or even the all metal machine like the Singer Stylist. If you've got any stubborn marks that don't just come off with a quick wipe with a dry cloth, dampen the cloth slightly. Now I mean slightly, you don't want it wringing wet, especially if your machine's electric. Water and electrics don't mix, so just slightly damp. If you've bought a cast iron machine, like Grandma here with decals, it can be tempting to give them a bit of a polish or a really deep clean with a household cleaner. The problem with doing that, or even using something like Gojo, is the substance can be abrasive, and any kind of abrasive material on your decals is going to strip them straight off. The best way of giving something like this a bit of a deep clean is by actually spreading this stuff all over it, sewing machine oil. Now, sewing machine manufacturers are a pretty clever bunch. They knew that the one substance that was going to come into regular contact with these old ladies in particular was going to be oil. So the decals and this, it's perfectly safe to use this. It's soft enough and it's not abrasive, so these are going to be perfectly fine. Now, I know there are people out there that literally swear by Gojo as a suitable cleaner for these sewing machines, but the thing is, you have to be really careful which Gojo you go for. You need to make sure it's the one that hasn't got pumice in it, and our pumice is volcanic rock and it's as rough as heck. It's great for getting hard skin off your feet, not so great for delicate decals. And even if the Gojo is pumice free, there's no guarantee that your decals will survive if you use it. It kind of depends on what condition they were in before you start and the type of decals you've got. Not all sewing machine manufacturers use super high quality decals. Some are more resilient than others. To me, using Gojo is a bit like playing decal roulette. Is it worth the risk just to save a few minutes? I think I'll stick with sewing machine oil. Next, what you want to do is check on the inside of the machine. Now, for more modern machines like Jerome here or the Singer Stylist, what you want to be doing is obviously taking the bobbin out and taking off the needle plate. Grab your sewing machine lint brush, which should come with your machine. If it doesn't, get yourself a small paintbrush, and then what you do is you just gently clean out the lint from the bobbin area and from underneath the bobbin case. Don't be tempted to use canned air on a machine like this one. Turn it around for a minute. This machine, the inside is all cased in. It's like a sealed unit, if you like, held together with screws. Now, the problem with using canned air to get the lint out of this bit is because it's encased, there's nowhere for that air to go. Well, more importantly, there's nowhere for the lint to go. And what you'll do is you'll blow the lint further inside the machine. Now, the thing is, because the lint is getting pushed further into the machine, it's getting into contact with places that it shouldn't normally, under normal circumstances, come into contact with. And because there's nowhere else for the lint to go, it's just going to build up and build up, and over time you're going to be causing a little bit of a problem for yourself, because if you get any lint, particularly with these machines because this is computerised, if that lint comes into contact with any of your computer elements, it's going to stop your sensors working and it's going to cause problems with your machine, and you're going to end up having to take it in to find out what's wrong with it, and that's going to cost you in repair bills. For these older machines, all you really need to do is lift them up out of the table until you can see the working parts underneath. Now again, what I tend to do is I'll clean them with sewing machine oil and a cloth. You can actually use canned oil on these machines because they're open. There's nowhere for the lint to get trapped. It'll just get blown straight out all over your floor. Top tip number 5, make sure you change that needle. Depending on how well the machine was looked after, you might find that the needle that it comes with is either blunt, or could be rusty, or it could be bent. So the first thing you want to do is change that out for a new needle. The next thing you're going to want to check is not all sewing machines, especially vintage ones, all take a class 15 needle, which is what this is. You might find, particularly if you go older than Grandma, she's a Singer 27 from 1912, if you go for a version 1 or a version 2, which pretty much the same kind of machine as this one, just earlier models, they take different size needles. So be aware of that before you take them home, because you might find you can't get that size of needle anymore, and it might make things tricky. Knowing what needle fits the machine is one of the places where your manual will prove itself to be invaluable. For tip number 6, we're going back to the sewing machine oil. Depending on how vintage your machine is, some machines, like your own here, don't need to be oiled. They get oiled at their regular yearly checkups. They're designed to go in for regular services. So every year, or whatever it says in your manual, these go to the sewing machine health spa, and that's where they get their topping up with oil in the service area. If you don't want to go down the route of getting your sewing machine serviced, check out YouTube for videos where people will show you how to service your machine. But bear in mind that if you've got a machine that you bought with a warranty, if you try and service it yourself, you will void that warranty. Okay. Vintage machines like Grandma over here and this Singer Stylist 476 do need to be oiled, and it is something that you can do yourself at home. Now again, your manual will tell you where the oil points are on these two machines, and it will also tell you, like with this one for instance, how often to oil it. This one, it's got oil points in the top section that need to be done once a year, and the oil points in here every month. The oil that you need to use on these machines, again, sewing machine oil. This is the stuff that is designed specifically for sewing machines, and it's the only safe oil that you should be using on them, because this is the one that isn't going to cause you any problems at all, either now or in the future. Now I like this particular style of sewing machine oil bottle because it's got a long spout, which makes it a little bit easier to get into the hard to reach places. What I'll do is I'll put a link below where you can get the sewing machine oil from. It'll be an Amazon affiliate link because obviously I'm an Amazon affiliate, but you can pretty much get sewing machine oil from anywhere where they sell sewing machines or sewing machine accessories. Not wishing to harp on too much about sewing machine oil, but if you haven't got any to hand, don't oil your machine until you've gone out and got some. Just because you've got a bottle of 3-in-1 in your garage doesn't mean you can use it on your sewing machine. The problem with 3-in-1 is it's too thick and it's going to gum up your inner workings. And we're heading back to another elephant in the room here. Don't use WD-40 to lubricate a sewing machine. It's not an oil, it's a water dispersing agent. You use it on locks that have been out in the rain too long, and the only thing it's going to do for your sewing machine is gum it up. Tip number 7. Learn how to use it. Grab yourself some scrap fabric and play with your new sewing buddy. Get to know how they work, what the different buttons do, what the different stitch widths and lengths look like, and check out on the older machines in particular which tension works best on what fabric. Depending on how vintage you've gone, these older machines, you have to decide what tension to set them on. These newer machines, the tension tends to be set on auto, so you don't have to fiddle about with it quite so much. In fact, you could probably leave it on auto for most things that you want to sew. Another good reason why you should take the time to play with your machine is because it gets you used to the foot control or the knee lever or whatever device is going to be working your machine. You get to find out where the biting point is and how much pressure you need to make it go quicker, or how little to push it down to get it to go slow. You and your new sewing buddy, however old it happens to be, are on a sewing journey together. And the more you get to know them and how they tick, if you like, the better your sewing experience is going to be. So enjoy it. And if you have just bought a new sewing machine and it's a vintage one, let me know in the comments. The last tip is a bit of a bonus tip. And the last thing that you're going to need to do once you've bought a vintage sewing machine is make room for some more. The thing with vintage sewing machines is once you've caught that bug, you're not going to want to stop at one. You'll find they'll be following you home. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Why not check out some of my other videos using these links that are coming up any minute now. Whichever video you decide to go and check out next, I hope to see you back here for the next one. And just so that you don't miss it, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell so that YouTube can notify you when I upload another one. In the meantime, whatever you're sewing it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thanks ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.